Welcome to the Culture Hub stage and welcome to Allyship on Trial. I'm Simi Gandhi-Whitaker and today I am not your host, I am your judge. Before we proceed, this court wishes to acknowledge the headline sponsor of these proceedings, Gleeds, Order, and we'd like to extend its thanks to Design and Build UK for convening what promises to be a landmark session. Order. Members of the jury, you're about to hear two very different arguments today. The motion in this is, male allyship in construction has reached its limit. Men have given everything they possibly can. The work now lies elsewhere. Do I hear any jeering? Thank you. Arguing for the motion that men are doing everything that they can reasonably be asked of them, we have Paul Halbert from Yes Electrical and Harrison Jones from RCK Partners. Arguing against the motion that allyship has barely scratched the surface and men can and must do more, we have Mark Harrison from CIOB and Kirsty Collin from Gleeds. I do just want to put a little disclaimer in here that the views of the defence are not all real and are just for illustrative purposes only. So no social media tagging for Paul and Harrison. As the jury, your role today is to listen carefully, to weigh the arguments, to notice what resonates and what does not. But at the end of this session, you will cast your verdict. You are really important. Who makes the most compelling argument? Which side do you want to send to the dock? I expect this room to be engaged. I expect it to be challenged. And I expect you to make your decision based on the strength of the argument, not the person making it, even if they've been on The Apprentice formerly. Please do use the QR code, which I am going to click. Is that correct? There we go. Thank you. Submit your reactions and questions. Your verdicts in progress. They'll appear live on the screen. And I reserve the right to use them as evidence. So please do get engaged. Court is now in session. Counsel for the prosecution, Mark Harrison and Kirsty Collin, you may present your opening arguments. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Your Honour.
You're welcome.
I will argue strongly against the proposition. We have in the construction industry a huge skills gap. We have people shortages, and we are required to recruit over 270,000 people just to meet current demand over the next 2 years. At the same time, we have approximately 16-17% of the workforce are female. If you look at on site, that falls to 2%. So there's an obvious answer here. I would argue it is imperative for the industry, for its survival, its financial viability, that we address the issue of the underrepresentation of women in the sector, and I would argue that it is unfair and unpractical to expect women to address this issue alone. I'll go into more detail in a minute if I may, Your Honour, but basically my argument is that gender equity is of benefit to men, both personally and professionally, and it is not a burden upon us to campaign for gender equality. It is of benefit to us, and we shouldn't be resisting it. We should be demanding it as men.
Very good. Very good. Do we have a reaction? Kirsty, would you like to add to that?
Yes, I would like to add to that. So I'm from Gleeds. My role is Global Head of CRM, but 50% of my role is running Women at Gleeds. So if allyship had gone far enough, we wouldn't need Women at Gleeds, but we do. And Women at Gleeds isn't a women's only group. It is for everyone, for it's all genders, because as Mark just said, it's not just down to women to do this. We need men to do this for us as well. I've been in the industry for many, many years, and I've had lots of different experiences, some which will make your toes curl, but I'm still here in the industry. And as part of my role as Women at Gleeds, I've been doing discovery interviews with people across our global organisation. So I've interviewed men and women and got their experiences. What I'm sad to say is that my experience in 2008 when I was a project manager, which wasn't a great experience on site, those things are still happening. They have improved, they are getting better, but it's still there. So we definitely need men to continue doing what they're doing and showing that allyship.
Okay. And against the arguments? Paul?
I thank you for your comments. Just picking up on one thing that Mark said about almost like an avoidance of employing women on site. I don't think there is that. For me, there's definitely been a motion over the last sort of 10, 15 years to get more women on site. There's definitely been promotion of women on site and promotion of women within positions in the industry as well. If you go back 15 years, there was hardly any women. I think the percentage is now growing. If you go back 10 or 15 years, you wouldn't even find a ladies' toilet on a building site. So, that growth and that progression is certainly there. Obviously, it's a very, very male-dominated industry, and so that would have only fallen on the shoulders of the men to push that through. If they would have really, really resisted it, then there still wouldn't be any ladies' toilets on site. There still wouldn't be the percentages that we've mentioned there. So for me, I do feel that men are doing a lot to get women into the industry. I do feel they're doing a lot to help them stay in the industry. But for me, I think it's almost a case of letting the evolution happen. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight, but there are lots and lots of motions and lots of things that we're doing as men to help to drive more women into the industry.
Can I just say that there's still not women's toilets on construction sites all over? That is still an issue. It was an issue in 2008 when I was on site, and it was the mop cupboard. It's still an issue now. It's not gone away.
Thank you. I think you'll have your chance. Harrison, do you want to take a moment?
Yeah, look, I echo a lot of what Paul said. I think over the last 10 years we've made massive strides. I think there's been an increase year on year of the number of women in construction, on sites, into leadership roles. Companies have put more and more money than ever into recruitment and different initiatives. And look, could we do more? Probably. We probably could do more in anything that you're doing in life. So to say we couldn't wouldn't make sense, and no one could argue against that. But do I think we're doing well? Yeah, I do. The construction industry has probably throughout history been a male-dominated industry, so change was never going to happen overnight. I think considering the length of time it changes so much in the last 20 years is actually, I think we've done pretty well, to be completely honest. That's just my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Okay, very good. So, against, it's unfair, it's impractical. Gender equity is of benefit to both men and women. It's of paramount support for businesses. Gleeds, 50% of the role is running women in Gleeds, and we need men to support that allyship. 4, the industry's grown over the years, multiple times. Already pushing enough. Men are doing a lot at pace. They've made investments in initiatives. It's a history of a male-dominated environment. Let's begin the cross-examination. Paul, do you want to start?
If I was to ask a question based on your opening statements, what area would you say we are fully lacking in? And actually, to put it back on you, what areas do you think that men are doing as much as they can?
Okay, I mean, I think the list is comprehensive, to be quite frank. To argue that we have seen enough change or even that the rate of change is adequate, I think is fairly laughable. I'm sorry, my honourable friends. But, we've got 2% of women on site. That's just ridiculous, And the industry is a fantastic one. And I think what we saw with the industry adopting health and safety measures just goes to show how quickly and how efficiently and effectively change can happen, right? It's done it before, we can do it again. It's necessary now as it was necessary then. We need to look at, everything from recruitment, we need to look at the perception of the industry. We have a problem there. We need to look at the way we recruit women into the industry, but equally we need to look at retention as well, because women are being recruited into the industry, but the data shows us they're just not staying. So why is that? So, we've heard toilets mentioned. We've heard, what about PPE that fits? Let's make the environment safe for women. And then we get onto workplace culture. And this is a big area for discussion, I think. We need a big change to make sure that workplace culture is inclusive and fit, not just for women, but for men as well. We've got super high rates of suicide in this industry. And I think it's no coincidence that we have such a high rates of very poor mental health for men and such low rates of employment for women. So I think there's work to be done right across the whole journey of employment, and happy to continue that. But over to you, Kirsty.
Yeah, so my message when I'm talking to people in our business is that men are bad and we're coming to take over and, anything like that. It's about kind of being curious and understanding, because a lot of the times people think that they're allies. They think that I speak to a lot of different men who just don't have the experiences that we do. And I don't chastise them because of that. I'm not saying, you're rubbish because you don't understand those experiences. But it's even little things like I had a conversation with one of our senior leaders within our business and told him that, when I go home at night from my friends, I'll put my location on for my friends. And he had no idea that that was something that I did. And he literally couldn't believe it. And that, I had a key in my finger. But
Harrison, what do you think about that? That women have to put locations on?
Yeah, I think it's awful, obviously. Just so everyone knows, I think that's terrible. However, that's another conversation, I think, outside of construction. I think, that's a completely different conversation. But no, obviously, I think that's bad.
But it's not just about, that does involve women who are on site, our safety when we're getting home from work, when we're leaving the office, when we're leaving the site. So there's lots of different things that, it's about being curious and kind of putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And this doesn't just kind of apply to gender. There's all different kind of minority groups as well, which we are. So it's about that curiosity and kind of changing the way you do things. I've done these discovery interviews across our business, and I'm still hearing how women are ignored in meetings. They're getting to make the tea or take the notes. They're getting someone that thinks that they're administration when they're a director. I've had a director who's told me that she's changed the way she looks to make herself look older, to get more respect in the room. So all these things are still happening now in 2026. So allyship hasn't nearly gone far enough and needs to continue developing, and men need to keep on learning and coming on the journey with us.
Yeah, just to pick up on a couple of bits there. Obviously, on the location bit, that's quite important. I think that's a society problem, not a construction industry problem. I have a daughter who's just turned 26. She works in the construction industry. And if I'm going to be honest, I'd probably get her to turn a location on more if she's going for a night out in London than when she goes to building sites for work. And so I think that's a society problem. I definitely wouldn't say that can be aimed at men in the construction industry, that they make it an unsafe place for women to.
And I wasn't aiming at men, it was about understanding. It was about having that kind of curiosity and understanding that we have to live a different type of world to the men.
Yeah, and also, obviously, you mentioned the recruitment side of it. Again, as a person that works in the construction industry and recruits lots of people, when we advertise for jobs, there's certainly no discrimination within the adverts that we're looking for men to come and do a job. There's certainly no discrimination in who we select for the interviews. and there's certainly no discrimination as to who we select to give the jobs to. So I'm just really looking to...
How do you know
How do
that?
you anonymise
Because I
that?
do the interviews.
But you could have unconscious bias there, though. How do you know that your bias isn't?
I'd probably say because if I look at my sales team, obviously within the industry, 40% of my sales team are women, which is massively over and above the sort of national percentage, I would assume. So what I'm really looking at is what would you say needs to be done? You mentioned the recruitment needs to change and the recruitment needs to be different, but what would you change rather than having a very open advert for anybody to apply for? And it's not really, it's a difficult thing to pin on the men in the industry if women are not applying for the jobs. We want them to apply, but if they're not, I'm not sure what else we can do to get them over the line.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not about your company in particular, Paul, I would say that. If you look at the statistics that I mentioned at the beginning of the opening remarks, women are massively underrepresented in the industry, right? And they do apply for jobs and they don't get them. And they are, what's interesting is there are in particular roles. That 18, 19% includes off-site as well, of course. And I would say that, you know, the big thing, the big change that needs to happen is workplace culture. That needs to change the reputation, the perception of the industry, but also working practices as well. But I guess I'd like to change it around slightly and focus on the benefits for men. I mentioned this at the beginning. I think professionally, gender equality would benefit men, and that's why we need to campaign hard for it. Companies that employ more women, it's statistically been shown and proven to show that they are more profitable, they're more creative, they treat their workforce a bit better. And that includes things like flexible working. And I would argue that equally benefits men. A lot of men in the industry are parents. A lot of men in the industry would benefit from spending more time with their children. A lot of men would benefit from taking paternity leave. So, and that will benefit men's mental health as well. Also, we can't forget many men have women in our family, of course. We have mothers, wives, daughters. You've mentioned daughters. And they work often in construction. If they have a good experience at work, that will reflect well in the home. That improves their mental health and it makes our lives better. So my argument is we're not doing enough. We should be for our own benefit, if nothing else.
And can I just check with your daughter, is it just one daughter you've got, would you be happy for her to be in this industry right now? Would you be happy for her to be working on site and to not have men backing her or being an ally?
I know she does work in the industry. She's been in the industry for 4 years. My wife was in the industry for 16 years prior to that. So, yeah, I've got a lot of experience of that. And, you know, and probably, again, if I look at how it's changed and how the industry has developed regarding women, over the 16 years that my wife worked in the industry, she had to go to the police 3 times over stalking and sexual harassment claims. And so, you know, but I look at my daughter, who's been in the industry for 4 years, and she has none of that. She's accepted. She's doing really well. And so when you ask, would I be happy to do it, she literally does it every day, and I'm more than happy. And I probably, you know, as we all would with our children, if I thought it was unsafe or not the right environment, I certainly would have encouraged it. But it was her choice. She wanted to come in. She'd seen me and my wife both doing well, and she'd obviously seen the sometimes the devastation with my wife coming home saying, I'm going to have to go to the police. And she'd been through that and she's seen that. But I think for her, she had seen over the years how it had got better. And it made her more confident that as a young girl at the time, she was 22 when she came into the industry, that it was a better environment, that things had changed and it wasn't as difficult for women as it used to be. So, like I say, you know, the change has taken over that period of time. And if you look at the change that's happened in the last 10 years and probably compare that to the 10 years previous, I'd probably say the 10 years previous, there was no change. But the last 10 years has been a massive change. And if we can get the same amount of level of change in the next 10 years, I don't even think we'll be sitting here talking about it because it's growing that fast. Like I say, compare the last 10 years to the previous. If we can get the same percentage level of growth for the next 10 years, we won't be sitting here next year, in 10 years' time.
But we need the male allies to get us there in the next 10 years.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Oh, it sounds like you're on our side there now.
Just a point of correction, if I may, Ronna.
Yes.
The most reliable data we have on women in the sector comes from the Supply Chain Sustainability School Diversity Report, and they've shown actually this year the proportion of women working in the sector has fallen for the last year. And so that's the sort of the hard data. The anecdotal data that we're getting in the professional member institutes is that there is a real concern, particularly from early career women who are facing problematic behaviour, particularly from senior men. Now, that's not to say all men are doing that, but it is a problem for women in the industry, and we need to address that. And that cannot be addressed without men on board. We need male allies on that.
Harrison, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. We obviously need male...
you can't agree, you're on the other side.
No, I agree on that. But
get with the programme.
My point is, I think at this time of having the conversation, male allyship is probably the strongest it's been in the history of mankind. Oh. But seriously, it is. So I think we're... I think having this conversation now, we're doing as much as we've ever done. So sometimes I feel the approach can maybe have the opposite effect, because almost the males or the male allies in the industry can sometimes feel like they're being attacked, like you're not doing this, when you're talking to the people that are actually doing something, and sometimes the people talking to them aren't doing anything. So I hear sometimes women are telling men you need to do more. I'm like, well, I don't think you employ anyone. So you might be having a go at someone like Paul, and he literally employs women, and the person with that strong opinion doesn't.
My question to the against, very good. My question to the against motion is, the four have said there's a lot of male allies, there's a lot happening out there. What more should they be doing? What more should the industry be doing?
Thank you. Yeah, I think we do have allies in the industry. You're absolutely right. Not enough, I would say. We need to do a lot more. An example I was given from the United States earlier this week, actually 2 days ago, by a colleague working there. The example comes from on site, and it was a site manager had a report from a female surveyor who came to look at window fitting. This really happened, by the way, true example. And the female surveyor reported that she'd been whistled at on the way onto the site. She reported this to the site manager, who then stopped all work on the site. Everything stops. He brought all the male fitters, the window fitters, to a meeting and said, we've had this report, this is not acceptable, no work continues if this happens again, and you will lose your contract if this happens again. He then reported it to the contractors, the manager, who reinforced that message. Unacceptable, zero tolerance. That's where we've got to be at in this country, I think. That's what we've got to do.
Yeah, and another example, which got told to me last week as well, it was about a tradeswoman who was on site, and one of the younger females had got a message, which I won't repeat on here right now, which was terrible. And he got taken off site for a couple of days, and then he was back on site, and that was it. He should have just been taken off and not been anywhere near us. So, you've got both ends. We need it to be that way, and not the way that I'm still hearing stories and experiences of on site.
One question as well is, what are you all doing to support construction bodies and professions to ensure that this motion is being pushed in government, across the business, across businesses? What is happening in the industry? Not that I'm biased to any side, by the way. I am neutral.
So the CIOB is part of the Be Inclusive partnership with RICS, REBA, RTPI, ICE, CIHT. I'm going to forget someone. Landscape Institute, CICES. And CIHT. We've signed a 5-year action plan to work on a range of issues around making the industry more inclusive, more representative, and more women-friendly, to put it crudely. A couple of areas we're working on. One is supporting returners to work, predominantly women on mat leave, of course, but it's not limited to that. There'll be men in that situation. How can we support, as an industry, women coming back in? Because we know that is a problem for women. and women often come back from work and then leave straight away. The other area we're looking at is something we just spoke about, which is problematic behaviour. How do we promote inclusive, respectful culture in the workplace for all? And I can't underline that enough. It is for all. It's for men as well. We know the mental health problems in the industry, and I don't think poor workplace culture helps men either.
No. So, Paul Harrison, how do you support some of these actions that are taking place? Are you members? Are you part of the discussions? Are you driving this forward in your businesses? I'm trying to give answers for our members of our jury.
Well, in business, yes. In terms of we hire quite a lot of women, and then me personally, I put myself in the firing line today for the cause, so we can put forward what potentially the opposing argument would be. And yeah, I think I do quite a lot actually. My goal, and we must speak to Michaela quite a lot about this, is making sure that, in all honesty, is making sure that women and like young girls, there's some initiatives Michaela's got going to schools, know that there's an equal opportunity aside from trying to push an equal outcome. So if you are a young girl, knowing that in school there's an opportunity after school that if you wanted to get into construction, it's an industry that will welcome you, you're not going to be discriminated against, and it's one you can fit into. So, yeah, that kind of answers it.
Members of the
Sorry,
jury.
can I just jump on one thing there? He said about obviously making sure that we improve everything for all and not just for women. And I think that's quite important that, we are pushing things for women and we are making sure that the conditions are right, etc. But we've also got to make sure that we don't leave the men behind as well, because there's a massive focus on women in construction, making sure it's great. But you mentioned earlier that the suicide rate of men in the UK as well as in the industry is high, and we've got to make sure that everybody's treated the same and treated fairly, because that is right. And also I look at some of the things that are aimed at the guys in the industry, and I think that a lot of the men do quite a bit to get the ladies on board and the girls on board and more women in the industry in general. But then sometimes, obviously, I work in the industry, have done for 27 years, and I look at some of the senior leaders in the industry, in the teams that I work in on site, etc., and some of the back of house teams in the offices, and some of the senior leaders that are ladies, they don't tend to sometimes have that many women in their teams. And so we have to look at that as well. We can't just go, it's not the men employing the women, because a lot of the time I see senior ladies and now have a team of 10 and 6 or 7 of those will be guys. So are they doing enough themselves to promote women into their teams as well as the men?
Yeah, but just to come back on that point.
Interesting. Go for it.
Sorry, just to say, unconscious bias affects us all, right? My point would be that inclusion and inclusive practices in the industry are for everybody. So the CIOB, we've just had a month-long campaign with Prostate Cancer UK, encouraging men to get tested. And please, men out there, get tested, get your PSA test. We know that affects huge numbers of men in the industry and their families, of course. The other campaign we've run recently is a Need to Talk sticker campaign, where we put 30,000 stickers on sites in toilet blocks and in lockers, designed specifically to help men, because we recognise that male mental health is a real issue in the industry. So it isn't just about women, but we do need to work on gender equity in the sector for the benefit of all.
I'm going to do something, but before, Paul, you answer that, I'm going to do something slightly different that we've never done in this courtroom, but I want members of the jury to think of some questions here for our what are you? Defendants? Prosecutor? Whatever. So have a little think. Paul, go for it. You were going to say something, were you? In response to that.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, it's, some very good points there. And I'm guessing the conversation is making sure that women are seen and heard and treated properly in the industry. But what you were saying there is you almost feel a little bit like some of the men are being discriminated against as well and not treated it's all almost like falling under the radar. Some of their needs and requirements are falling under the radar. So, again, like I say, we've got to make sure.
You poor man.
I know, it's difficult. It's really difficult. And so we just got to make sure, because you're almost going the other way here and flipping the conversation on its head. So I just want to make sure that it is an equality thing, and you know, it's not all about making sure men have got everything. It's not all about making sure that women have got everything. It's about making sure that everybody has the same, and everybody's
Quality.
treated the same, and everybody's got the same opportunity. And you know, we just got to be cautious a little bit that we don't go one way or the other.
Sorry, we're already one way. That's the problem.
Imagine a world where there were more women than men.
Do you know what? When I started Women at Gleeds, there was someone overheard saying, "When are we going to get a Men at Gleeds?" And I was kind of like, "Well, you know, if you feel that you need one, go ahead and set it up. Or do you want me to set that up for you as well?" So you know.
Do we have any questions? I'll pick on you. Wonderful. The lady there in the pink top, could we give her a mic? Thank you. I am the judge. It's not my job to walk around. I'm taking this really seriously.
Thank you all. Really, really great discussion, great points on both sides. We talked about kind of like being inclusive for men and women. How do we kind of make these changes, but whilst not alienating men as well? Like, we've all got to come together. We've all got to work towards making these changes and making it better for everybody. How do we ensure we don't alienate men in this process?
Can you? Let's share a mic.
Yeah, good question. I think, and I'm going to be a bit repetitive in my answer, but I think we need to give power to the arguments that gender equity is good for everybody, that it is good for men. As I've said, professionally and personally, it benefits everyone when there is better gender equity in any industry. And we need that argument to be made by the male, you know, the reality is that most of the leaders, the senior leaders in our industry are male. We need those senior leaders to step up, recognise that argument and make that argument very strongly. We're trying to be part of that at the CIOB. But yeah.
What's your view on quotas?
Quotas, I think, are a distraction. We don't tend to, in the world of inclusion and equality in the UK, we don't talk about quotas. It's
Well, then how will there ever be any women on boards?
how.
Just asking.
Well,
for a friend.
positive action and continuing to make the case and make the changes to the.
Do we think that's too soft? You're here
You're the judge.
arguing against. You want change, right?
Quotas have happened around the world. It's happened in higher education in Norway, for example. The problem is if you impose quotas, you're not changing the systems that generate the bias and the disadvantage. So what we need to do is address those systems, those policies and practices that result in discrimination and bias.
Okay. Any other questions? Lovely. We'll come to you in a minute.
Hello, I'm Tessa. You spoke about gender equity and everything being the same. Well, if the same is what I currently see every day, I don't know that I want it. If the same continues maybe to be a lot of man bashing and a lot of sidelining of women in meetings, all these sort of stereotypical things that we see happening, if that's what the same looks like, we're not there yet. So what I think, rather than just blanket statement, what would your statement be about how to maximise mutual respect?
Tessa, do you think women need to get a thicker skin?
Oh, ouch.
Just
There you go. Don't need to say any more, do I?
We've got a question. Good point. While you think about that, we've got a question at the back there, the lady in the white shirt. Oh, sorry. There are two men that have questions as well, and then they'll be our last two. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for your thoughts. My name is Nadia Krupska. I'm an architect. I would like to ask you a very plain question about money. We know, it's a fact, women are paid slightly less, especially when we reach senior managing director, exec. So what is a view on that? Thank you.
Do you last?
Is that the question?
What is your view?
Is that the question?
That's the question. What's
view
your view? What's everyone's views on the gender pay gap?
as part of this exercise? Could it potentially... Is it potentially around negotiation of the package, potentially?
No.
No? No, but that's a serious question. Could it ever be to do with that?
It's about organisational
because I've
change.
again spoken to my partner before, and she said I never would have said that. I would have just let it happen. Where I was like, no, I was offered that, and I went back with a counter, and then it ended up like that.
But what about the people that have been in employment for so many, many years? Paul, for example. What's your statement? How do you employ people in your business? Would you say the pay is equal?
In our business, I would say, I hope it is. For
Hope
me,
is weak.
well, I believe that it is. I don't think
Believe is weak. We need facts, Paul.
I'm not looking at it as a gender pay gap. I think it's almost there's an issue with people that show a level of loyalty as they go.
Your friends are paid more.
No. I think we undervalue it. If I look even within our own industry, my industry, if we have people that come through the system and we get to a management level, they tend to be on a lower salary than somebody that we bring in. And if you look at that in other businesses, like in the football industry, you know, you generally find...
That's a bad example,
Well,
Paul.
no, I'm saying
Don't
there's people
shoot
coming
yourself
through.
in the foot. These
But
people
you'll
are
generally
paid
find
multi-million
a
pounds.
homegrown player will get less money than somebody that's brought in on a bigger salary. So I think that, I don't think it's a gender, I think it's almost like a loyalty gap that we need to make sure that there's a certain wage for a certain job. And then
Do you have
that
specific
breaches all of that.
bandings in your business?
Bandings.
So if a quantity surveyor comes in versus a quantity surveyor that has been in your business for 5 years, are they paid equally?
I would say no. I would say no, and I don't think that's right.
Could you please review that when you get back?
But
Kirsty,
I
I'm
think
going to hand this over
that's-
to you.
Well, I think that's the
before we
same
have our
against
final
in
question.
a lot of industries. I think that that loyalty
Thank
is
you,
sometimes
Paul.
undervalued. We didn't
Kirsty,
address
over to you.
Tessa's question either.
I'm just...
Don't hate me, Paul. Sorry.
You've silenced me with that. So you, as you say, I'm just putting this back to you. So if a man who's come up to you and asked for a pay rise, and you've given him that pay rise, but there is women equal in that, would you then go up to her afterwards and say, well, you know, suchbody's asked for a pay rise, think you're working well, you deserve to be on the same level, or would that gap still then be there and continue on through that? And what about when loyalty is broken due to the woman going off and having a baby? So what happens there as well?
Yeah, that the loyalty being broken, I can only speak from our own business, but that doesn't come into effect at all. So there's a continuation of employment, so that doesn't get affected at all. With regards to somebody getting a pay rise and then matching somebody up, yeah, I would say we do that. We do. You know, it's yeah, I'd say that I'm just trying to think of examples, but we do. Yeah, we will say, because, you know, yes, do we want to? Yes, we want to make sure everybody's equally paid, but also we don't want people to start talking and create unrest amongst the workforce. So we we head that off at the pass. So if we do look after somebody, we look after everybody on the same level. So yes, we do that.
Okay, Paul, can we pass to Mark? And then we'll go over to our final question.
Yeah, just to cut to the gender pay gap question, there is a very obvious pay gap in the sector. It's absolutely wrong, and it is not going to encourage women to come into the sector, is it? I mean, bottom line. So we need to deal with it. To answer the question now, I'm not entirely sure I understood it, forgive me. Inclusive practices are not about men bashing. no matter how much certain sections of the press or certain politicians paint it as such, and we don't. Treating people fairly does not mean treating people all the same either. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to the final question.
Okay, thank you. This is particularly to you guys over there. Building on my fellow jurors' question, is there any reason why we shouldn't alienate men who don't believe in gender parity?
So the question is, shouldn't we alienate men that don't believe in gender parity? Is that right?
Yeah, I think we should alienate men.
Should we hang them?
I'm probably going across to the other side now. I need to change seats, but I think we should do. Yeah, it's... unfortunately, that's not something I can actually argue against. And so, yeah, no, I completely agree. It's...
But what if you need them? Like, what if this is a really important person in your business? You've got a multi-million-pound contract, and he is running that contract, and he is not a very nice human being. I'm being polite. What do you do then? Do you take him off site? Do you get him out?
Yeah, I believe so. We would. I can only speak again from my own personal experience. We wouldn't tolerate that. It's we sort of pride ourselves in our business that we have a very, very loyal workforce. We've got hundreds of people that have worked for us for over 20 years, and we keep a lot of people. I think because we are fair to people, we're right with people, and we don't accept any of that. So with regards to people being wrong on site, wrong within the business, wrong within the office, we will deal with that straight away. And with regards to what you're saying, the gender pay gap.
Give him a clap for that.
Yeah,
He's had a lot of bashing.
Yeah, we would have that equality. And like I say, we have a lot of women in our business. We have a lot of women in senior positions in our business, like the head of e-com, the head of IT, the ladies, and they're paid accordingly as to what the job would pay, whether they're a man or a woman. It's not. We've got a female head of IT, so we pay them this, and the male head of IT, we have a head of IT, and that's the salary. So we certainly don't discriminate on that front.
Very good. Thank you all. Sorry, Kirsty, no more time. But however, each of you, before we get to our verdict, each of you have 60 seconds, and I mean 60 seconds, you know what I'm like, 60 seconds to address the jury, your closing comments, make it count.
I'll just repeat, I suppose, my argument that gender equity is good for everyone. It's obviously good for women, it's good for men. Personally, it's good for the men's families, for children, for parenthood, and it's good for their partners, their wives, their daughters. So I think it's clear from the data, we haven't moved far enough. We've made little incremental changes, but it's far, far too slow. So for the benefit of all in the industry and for the industry itself, we need to promote gender equity, and men need to lead on that for change to happen. There you go. I rest my case.
So allyship needs to continue. It does. There is a lot that has happened. There are good men out there. I got to where I have today from good men, and there's one sat in the audience as well. But it's about speaking up in the moment. It's about challenging those biases, being curious. More has to be done. We are on the right track. But by just saying that, men have done enough and stepping away from this at this point is not going to do anything, especially when we've not even touched on this, when the world outside has got manosphere and rape academies and all sorts of things that are going on out there at the moment, which are making the gap a lot bigger. We need men more than ever. So, to make this work.
Yeah, for me, I think as we've established from the very start, it's a very, very male-dominated industry, has been for a long time and still is. But without the men who are dominating that industry becoming a little bit more open, becoming more favourable to ladies and women coming into the industry, nothing would have changed. Nothing would have changed. If they had still had that stubbornness and the ignorance, if you want to call it that they had 15, 20 years ago, nothing would have changed. So I do think men are changing. I do think men are doing more. I do think men are more open to women, and we are seeing the numbers grow. And, there's lots of things that we could say aren't happening in the world and industry. Is there enough happening regarding diversity? is there enough happening regarding equality? You could argue yes and no on both sides. Are either of those happening quick enough? You can argue yes or no on both sides. I don't think it's about equality and women in the industry. I think it's a number of things in the industry and in life in general that we want to change, but we have to, like I said before, allow them the time of evolution. We're not going to change it all overnight, and I think we're in the right path.
Final say, Harrison. 30 seconds.
Yes, the question is, are we doing enough? I think at this moment in time, we're doing more than we've ever done. So in that sense, yes, we are doing enough. Can we do more? Of course we can. Like I said earlier, you can always do more in anything that you're working on. And the amount of women in the industry is more than it's ever been. So I think we're doing pretty well. Can we do better? Yes. There we go.
Very good, very good. Members of the jury, it is up to you now. You've heard both sides. You've weighed the arguments. Some sketchy, but that's okay. They're arguments nevertheless. Now it's time for you to decide. This is really important. Use the QR code. Cast your vote now. Which side do you want to send to the dock? Votes will close in a couple minutes, and we will display that. One more minute to vote. Okay, so the court has reached its verdict. Members of the jury, I have before me the result of your vote. On the motion that male allyship in construction has reached its limit, you will find as follows. Do we click? Go back, go back. Oh, there we go. We have the results. It is not carried. The result is not carried. I repeat for the benefit of the back row, the result is not carried. The court notes on evidence presented that allyship is not a one-off gesture. It is a practice. It's shown who gets heard, who gets hired, who gets sponsored. Accordingly, the court is as follows. It is not carried. Thank you to Paul, Harrison, Mark and Kirsty for an exceptional session. I'm sorry I gave you all grief. This is exactly the kind of debate that we need, though, in all seriousness. Thank you to Michaela, the design and build team, for setting this up, and to Gleeds. It's really important that you've all had your say. Thank you very much, and let's keep doing more.